Lina. I'm an investment director with a fund called Target Global. We're a pan-European fund, just over $3 billion in assets under management today. And one of our very successful portfolio companies is TravelPerk. Maybe Avi, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Avi from TravelPerk. We are a human connection platform. I'm still trying this out, this new, we can talk about it, our new mission. What we really do is a business travel platform. So, instead of your old school legacy travel agent, we're just the modern SaaS way of booking and managing trips. We started a company in Barcelona, which is as nice of a weather as Dublin is today.
Close second.
We started a company in 2016, and we just crossed $100 million of ARR. So, and then we had this little bump on the road. I don't know if you heard about this COVID thing, which kind of impacted the travel industry a little bit. So we had a couple of years of interesting times, but we still managed to grow pretty fast. So happy to be here. Yeah.
That was definitely an understatement. I mean, during COVID, it demolished the travel industry, right? So there were a solid 2 years where pretty much no one was traveling. I mean, forget business travel. And surprisingly, I mean, 2 years later, right, TravelPerk emerged as a billion-dollar business. Amazing, some amazing traction happening off the back of that. And I would dare even to say a market leader in Europe for this category of travel. So today we're actually going to get a little bit into that. We'll be asking Avi about some more stories about what's happened during that period and essentially how following like one very basic principle, which is sticking to your values, right, in times of any time actually, ups and downs, really help transform the business to what they are today. So yeah, Avi, I mean, maybe we can get started with that. When did you actually start thinking about company values, and what was generally like the catalyst for you to think about them and implement them?
Yeah. So first, my background is engineering, right? So I'm a software developer, and I tend to also to be, I don't know if it's related, but I also tend to be cynical. So when I think about company values, I always think about it like, The Office. Like, the TV show.
Love The Office.
Would you watch the real one, the British one, or the American one?
The American one.
It's actually, the Ricky Gervais one is even better.
Is it better?
Yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that. So I couldn't, and to this day, I cannot help by being cynical about the corporate values that are written on the wall, but nobody actually acts upon, and nobody knows what they are. Before starting TravelPerk, I actually sold my previous company to Booking.com, and I worked at Booking for a bit more than a year. And one of the things that I definitely took away from that experience, Booking is a great company, and one of the best things about this company is their culture. And when I was able, and I was lucky to speak with Case Colin, who's one of the founders of Booking.com and was the CEO, the legendary CEO of the company for many years. I asked him about the culture, and he's very Dutch. So if you ever met Case Colin, he's like super direct. And I asked him about the values, because it was surprising to me that somebody so, call it execution focused, would also think about such a fluffy, intangible topic. Values, so I asked him about the values, and I was curious about the culture. And he said, values are for idiots. That's my Dutch accent. We have a formula. Actually, it's more like Israeli accent. And they really have a formula. Booking.com have a 7-point formula, which basically is the company values. And it drives, and the reason he calls it a formula is because it drives decisions on a day-to-day basis, right? So that's the first time I saw a company from the inside where values were basically an operating guide instead of just being this kind of usual corporate BS. It's a child-friendly conference. So, so very operational driven, and that's what I took, one of the best things I took from Booking.com into creating TravelPerk. together with my co-founders, Javi and Ron, we set for, so we asked when did I think about it. I actually started thinking about it before we started the company.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the first things we did before even talking about the product is meeting in a restaurant in Barcelona. So, Silicon Valley, you meet in a garage. So in Barcelona, you meet in a tapas restaurant. And we drew on a napkin the 7 values that we thought we should have as a company. So it was one of the first decisions we made as a team was agreeing on the values.
That's very, very cool. So how did your values actually evolve over time? I mean, we put up, TravelPerk's company values up on the screen. Did they remain the same? Did they change over time? You mentioned it's kind of like an operating guideline. So maybe you can, speak a little bit to the evolution, if any.
So what's interesting in this question is you can actually see the answer on screen if you knew, right? So the values, so we did change the values. We had 7 values, like Booking.com has 7. So we thought that's the number you need. Makes sense. And the 3 of us, we came up with our own core values, things that we care about as people. And you see the Venn diagram of these on the screen here, or here. Right? So these are the 5 values that we had from the beginning that never changed. The wording changed a little bit. Be a good person used to be called don't be an asshole. So we just made it a bit positive, a bit softer, but it's the same value. And we had 2 more that we adopted from Booking.com. And what's interesting to note is that these 2 over the years got forgotten and were left outside, on the editor room floor, right? So they never made it, through the organic growth of the company.
Okay.
And the 5 values that came from us, from the founding team, stayed. And I think the reason for that is if you really think about core values, and I'm using I think the Jim Collins definition, if I'm not mistaken, for core values, so as defined as values that you stick to, even if you have something to lose. Right? So it's very easy to say, we are, so our first value is we believe in 7-star experience to our customers and to the team, to our team. And it's very easy to say, to shout it, from the stage. It makes me look like a great person and look at me. I believe in treating my team well and my customers well. But if you don't actually stick to it, when you have something to lose, then it's worse than not having values. It's an empty value that your team and your partners and your investors completely see through, and you look like a fraud. So I think this was the test without really realizing it. But over the years, this was really the test. Which values are really core values to us as people, and which values we added. So we had one of the Booking.com values is, they call it milking the cows, very Dutch farming values. And we adopted it. I was vegan at the time, so we called it watering the fields. We made it vegan. But it was a completely artificial value that didn't come from us as a founding team. It came from another company. We just thought it sounded good, but we didn't really stick to it. We didn't really hire and let go based on its value. And eventually, we just dropped it from the list. So yes, we changed it, and we went to the core of what we care about as people.
Wonderful. I mean, you mentioned that values is perceived as a pretty fluffy, kind of conceptual, right, thing. When it comes to implementing values within your team and within your company and with every new hire, I mean, maybe you can give us a bit of insight into how you've encouraged and kind of implemented those values to be like really lived and breathed every day by every single team member at TravelPerk.
Yeah. So I see values as, like Case Colin told me, it's an operational guide, right? It's how we, basically how we make decisions at scale. So I think all of us who are founders here, I hope you would agree that you don't want to be the bottleneck, on top of a pyramid of decision making. It's not efficient, and it's not the best way to scale. And also the worst way to hire creative people, by definition. Right? So creative people want independence in the decision making, and you want to delegate that, but you also want the decision to be made according to your values. So, or according to your culture, which is manifested in values. So I really see it as an operating guide, which means that it has to be present in every step of our day, right? So the beginning and the most important part is we hire only based on, not only, but let's say you cannot get hired into TravelPerk without a value fit. a culture fit. And during the interviews, we actually assign, in the process when you get interviewed to joining us, people who speak with you, and the minimum amount of people that speak with a candidate for, let's say, an intern with no experience that don't really have a lot of content to talk about, the minimum of people will be 3 people will speak with a candidate. And the reason for that is you need to look at values from different angles to assess them. It's not very easy to assess values of a person. We ask stories, examples, we do reference calls, and of course we just ask them directly about their values, and we try to assess a fit. And even if the person is the best, whatever, engineer, designer, salesperson in the world, if they don't fit our values, they will not get hired. And if we made a mistake, we will let them go based on values. Even if they hit quota 400%, we don't care. So I think this is the basis of everything is you hire and let go based on your values. You make decision based on your values, and then you make it very visible by talking about it. So we make a decision. We said, we decided this or that because of 7-star or because of we are a team. So we bake the values into the day-to-day communication of the company.
I'm curious, right? Because one of your values is we are all owners, right? And of course, in a especially growing organization, maybe it's a bit different when you're very small. Some people are managers that kind of own a team and own kind of whatever their part of operations is, and some people are more or less, right? They're individual contributors, or as you mentioned, juniors that are just starting off. So how do you actually train or to just kind of spread that value of like we are all owners, right, to everyone in the organization, or is that maybe not an expectation for like everyone in the organization?
It is, and it manifests itself in different ways, different jobs and roles and level of experience. I was an owner when I was a waiter in a bar, right? I didn't own the bar, but I saw myself as somebody whose job is to make sure that customers come to the bar, have a nice evening, and live happy. And I didn't care if my job was just to wash the dishes that evening. I looked around and I tried to get into the role of thinking about the full user experience. And I really believe, and I was very junior and was paid very little, I really believe that it's something that comes from inside.
Yeah.
You want to be a part of something bigger, and you're happy to do your job, even if it means just washing the dishes, because you understand how important it is for the rest of the operation. So that's how I expect everybody at the company to think, and that's how we hire, actually. We hire people who want to be that, who want to be, okay, I'm washing the dishes, or in our example, in our case, I'm writing code, or I'm providing customer support, or I'm the receptionist. Whatever my job is, I understand how it fits into the big mission of the company, and I'm proud in being a part of the mission, and this is the sense of ownership.
Yeah. And would that also apply to when you're thinking of letting go someone? So maybe that person is, kind of really performing and everything that person's doing, but there was something about, like, let's say, the way they're treating their team members, right? That may not exactly fit into, we are a team value. Like, would you let go of that person from?
Yeah, I would. And happened. I mean, of course, I cannot talk about it on stage, but it happens all the time.
Okay.
We let go high-performing team members. It's not fun. It's not the best thing. It's a lot of waste, hiring resources and training time, and it's draining on a team. But it's even worse if you leave them. And what does it mean about your values? If you lose somebody, just because they're performing highly, everybody looks, everybody around looks and understands that we don't really mean when we say that we care about the values, right? So it's actually it's not fun, right? It's not pleasant, but it's the easiest letting go that exists for me. It's more difficult when it's the opposite, right? So somebody with a great cultural fit who just cannot perform their job, to me personally, it's more difficult than the other way around.
Very interesting. So let's kind of go one level deeper and see how these sets of values helped your team and the business eventually survive, like, essentially a 2-year drought, right? You guys raised 2 of your biggest financing rounds during that 2020 to 2022 period. You saw astronomical growth. You also, I think, went through some of your biggest organizational changes in this time period. So maybe you can give us some very pointed examples about how you implemented this and some of those strategies.
So the pandemic, unfortunately, provided great opportunities to actually prove my point that you stick to your values when you have something to lose. So COVID hit, we had negative revenue in April of 2020. I went to business school, and they never taught me that it's possible to have a negative revenue, right? The top line was negative, not the bottom line. Bottom line is common, right? But yes, it's possible, unfortunately. It's when you refund more money to your customers than we collect in a given month, and we refund it because we believe in 7-star, right? So we followed our values, even though it was expensive. And then everybody in the industry, in the travel industry, everybody who had more than a few hundred employees, and at the time we had 450 employees at the beginning of COVID. Today we are more than 1,200 worldwide. So 450 employees, 300 of them were left with basically no work to do. Most of them were in sales, in customer support, travel agents, right? And there was nothing to do after the first wave of cancellations. And everybody in the industry just let these profiles go. And I was thinking, what do you do, right? So you're a GDS expert. GDS is one of these archaic systems that airlines use to book your tickets. And it's a very archaic system, so it takes a few years to become an expert in the GDS. And typically these are very highly skilled, very kind of niche roles that are only employed by travel agencies. So let's say you are a mother or father of 2 living in a small apartment in Barcelona or in Berlin or in London where we have offices, and you're being let go because of the fact that there is a pandemic and nobody, we don't need the volume, we have no volume, so we don't need the role right now. What do you do? And for many of our people, it would mean, the difference between getting paid a salary and waiting for unemployment a few months because the Spanish government is as efficient as it sounds, meaning not efficient at all. So what do you do when you have no money to buy food for your kids? And this was a real problem of people in my team. We're not talking about canceling your Peloton subscription. We're talking about food for your children. So I'm very grateful that and I'm not saying it just because she's here, my great board featuring Target Global and the rest of the investors, Chinovik and General Catalyst and others, really understood that we want to operate according to our values, and we chose not to do any layoffs at all at the company. We all went together through this pandemic. It was costly, but we actually acquired more customers during this time, and now you can see in the graph, revenue graph, you can see the result of keeping a team, and not just a team, a highly motivated team that knows that we're there for them during the pandemic. It wasn't obvious at the time, but now it's very obvious.
Yeah. Did some of your customers actually notice in this time period? I mean, it must have also been very, tough for your customers that, they're not traveling, they have to make a decision to essentially not engage, right? So you have like an entire customer support team that, maybe went and engaged with some of your customers. I mean, maybe you can, say a few things about some very practical, activities that your sales and CS team did.
We used the time. I mean, we didn't just lay out our hands, right? So we used the time to upskill people. We moved people from customer care to sales, and then from sales to customer care, right? So we were creative with the time, but essentially we kept the team and we kept our values, and now it pays dividends. Yeah,
very interesting. You also made a couple acquisitions in these years, and you decided to take on some of the folks from those acquired companies onto your team. Can you speak a little bit about that integration process and how what role values played in that integration process?
It's interesting because we made 4 acquisitions during the last 2.5 years. One pretty large one in Birmingham and the others relatively smaller. And we wouldn't make any of these acquisitions without a complete culture fit between the companies. So it was actually tough. Like, how do you assess a culture fit of a team of 150 people that you hire? And we actually did it. We interviewed many of them, not all of them, but most of the teams, and really dug into the culture that we're buying. Otherwise, it wouldn't fit. And we would have to let people go because I wouldn't keep people in the company that are not a culture fit. So very happy that the integration is ongoing, but going on really, really well. Yeah. And I think to a large extent, thanks to that, thanks to the fact that we actually see the world in the same way. Yeah. And it was like meeting a long-lost sibling.
Yeah, very cool. Any advice to founders, early growth stage, that have thought about values? Maybe they have co-founders and they can't agree on values. They're like, oh, maybe we just do it another time. Do you have any practical advice for them?
Do it. That's a practical advice. You need to have a list of values. You need to act, like not just a list, right? You need to make decisions based on your values. Everybody sees these decisions, and they become your culture, basically. And that's the only recipe I know to creating a great culture is having good values and then sticking to them.
Very cool. Maybe a couple rapid fire questions. So you mentioned The Office. What are some books or movies or TV shows that bring you a little bit of inspiration on how you operated, especially in the early years, right? You started as an engineer. I mean, you had an entrepreneurial kind of experience beforehand, but definitely not at this scale. So maybe you can speak a little bit too.
Yeah, Silicon Valley, the TV show, and we crashed. Get a lot of inspiration there. No, jokes aside, I think the most important book that I've read. So 2 books that have the same words in the title, not related except that. But one is for life and one is for business. So the life book that I highly recommend to everybody is The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. A really great book about, it's a meta-research about having, what science tells us about being happy in life. I'll give you a spoiler. You need to have a family and close friends, and you need to have a purpose in your life, which for most of us is our job. And I think many people neglect the first for the second. So don't forget that. So I'm, at least from my perspective, I'm happily married. You should ask my wife if she agrees. But I'm happily married. I have 2 kids, and I'm not ashamed to prioritize my family. And I think that's key. And I took it from the book. So the Happiness Hypothesis, and the other one is Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos. And this book drives our 7-star experience, and it drives how we think about our customers and about our company. So these 2 books really change how I see the world. Highly recommend.
Amazing. We have this timer flashing angrily at us, so we're a little bit over time. But thanks so much, everyone. Thanks so much, Avi.
Yeah, we should.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.